Waves just released their first CBT, and I was lucky enough to get some early access. Today I wanted to share some of my first impressions with you all after playing for about 4 hours on stream last night. I plan to play a lot more during the beta and will provide a more detailed review towards the end of that beta, but for now let's dive into my initial thought. I'd like to kick off my review of Wuthering Waves by discussing the game's movement system, which was the first thing that caught my attention. And let me tell you, it's actually really amazing. The movement is extremely responsive and active, allowing for seamless navigation of the game's world. With features like wire bugs, auto vaulting, wall running, and air dashing, movement feels both quick and precise. While there was a few instances where I got stuck wall running, they were far and few between. Additionally, the game actually ran really solid at a 60 FPS, but I will say that I was on PC for my experience. Moving on to the combat system, as expected, it's fantastic. I was blown away by how responsive and satisfying it felt, whether I was taking on regular enemies or bosses. In my 4 hours of playtime, I only had the chance to fight one boss, but it was incredibly fun and action-packed. The cutscenes that led up to the fight were really driven with story and added to the excitement, and the cutscenes while in-game were also something that just helped kind of lead the story forward and made the fight feel more inclusive that way. At the beginning of the game, your team is limited to the rover and you don't have access to the wire bug, so the combat does feel a little bit more restricted. However, as you recruit more characters, you get the free characters and stuff like that, things start to flow much better with QTEs and meter building. Each character that I played had their own unique feel, and although they were all different, they were still connected enough to make the combat feel more natural. The QTEs, the meter building, and all that just really helped the connection between the different teams and just having a little bit more flow in combat. The parrying system was stronger than I anticipated, and it's worth noting that unlike in PGR where you have a limited amount of dodge that is built up during the fight, and Wuthering Waves dodge is tied to your stamina, so it is a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more forgiving, I will say. While this did feel a bit different, I found that both systems were similar enough and worked well in their respective games. Moving on to the story, I've heard some people expressing some concerns about it being too fast-paced and the connection to the characters feeling a bit off. However, in my opinion, the connection between the characters felt a little bit more natural than in most games. Not everybody immediately trusts the rover, and Yang Yang is the only one who puts her faith into her due to the connection to the stream that has led her to find Rover. She and Bai both have their doubts about the rover, which actually makes sense considering her power and ability to fight. It's a little bit more realistic than everybody just instantly liking the rover just because it's the main character. You have to go through quest lines for she and Bai to build up that trust a little bit more. While the pacing is a bit quick, I played other CBTs where the story wasn't as detailed and had weird pacing that ended up being addressed in later CBTs. I can see the potential in the story and it kept my attention most of the time. One thing to note is that the CBT did not have English voice acting, but I have heard that the Chinese beta was voiced for a lot of the cutscenes. However, this is just something that happens with first editions of CBTs and something we can look forward to in future CBTs and the final release in regards to English voice acting. Regarding the gacha system, I'll touch on it briefly. This is the first CBT. It's expected that the rates might not be the best and adjustments are going to be made based on the feedback. I would say that this is going to be way more aggressive than it's probably going to be at release. It's also unclear what kind of the grind will be for the currency, whether there's going to be daily, weekly, event grinds, all that different stuff, and also whether there's going to be a shard grinding. And while it may be necessary to pull the unit, you know, you're going to have to win the 50-50 and all that different stuff. You might be able to grind the shards for your dupes, and this could make it easier to build units over time. Currently, the pity is a 90 out of 50-50, which does not feel great. Ideally, the pity rate should be at least 70-30 if they are going to be a little bit more aggressive, but I would like to see 100% at the 90 pity. I want to get my character if I hit pity. If you are planning to give feedback, especially on stuff like this, just make sure we're trying to be as respectful as possible towards Kiro. This is their first CBT. We don't want to go in guns blazing, being rude and all that different stuff. They're obviously putting a lot of time and adjustments into this. They had a live stream where they were talking about all the different feedback that they got from the international test and how they just kind of started to work on different things. So they are listening to some regard. I know it's very frustrating to see stuff like this when it comes to our gacha games, especially when we see stuff like PGR and having such a fair balance thing, but I know you guys are passionate, but let's just put that passion into respect and just put it in the feedback as much as we can when we're playing the CBTs and just voicing our concerns. But that's all I really have on this one. I like to do a little bit more in depth as we progress through the CBT, put in a lot of hours in, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good rest of your night, guys. Peace.